The candlelight flickers against the vaulted stone walls, its wavering glow breathing life into frescoes that have watched centuries pass in silence. You stand in a chamber hidden beneath a Florentine palazzo, a place where the air is heavy, with dust and memory, and the scent of oil paint lingers like the ghost of a vanished age. Before you, a vast panel of Renaissance art rests beneath a veil of linen. The keeper of this room, a figure in a dark scholar's robe, does not speak at first. Instead, he studies you, as if weighing whether you are ready to hear what has been kept from the uninitiated. When at last the cloth is drawn back, the world within the painting opens like the pages of a forbidden book. At first glance, it is a holy scene. Saints kneel, angels descend, the Madonna cradles the divine child. But in the composition's geometry, in the tilt of a hand, in the improbable arrangement of clouds, lies another order of meaning, one never meant for the faithful masses. You are told that this is how the Renaissance truly began, not as a flowering of art for beauty's sake, but as a rebirth of ancient wisdom long buried beneath the ashes of empires, in the courts of Medici patrons and the studios of master painters. The forgotten language of Egypt, the symbols of Hermetic and Gnostic traditions, the alchemical diagrams of the Arab scholars, all were reborn, not in open proclamation, but encoded within sacred seams. It was a pact between the artist and the initiated viewer, a veil woven of pigments and light through which truth might pass unseen by the unprepared. The scholar gestures to the folds of a saint's robe, where the lines form the unmistakable glyph of the Ouroboros, the serpent devouring its own tail. Here, he says, is the cycle of death and rebirth, the eternal return of spirit into matter and matter into spirit. A truth older than Rome, older than Greece, carried forward, in secret by the few who remembered. The composition's proportions echo the harmonic ratios of sacred geometry, and the light falling upon the Madonna's face follows the very path of the sun through the zodiac. You realize now that what is called Renaissance art is not merely the triumph of realism or perspective, but an encrypted manuscript in color and form. And the painters, Botticelli, Leonardo, Michelangelo, were less artisans than keepers of a hidden archive, concealing fragments of a tradition that stretched back to the temples of Luxor, the libraries of Alexandria, the mysteries of Eleusis. The scholar steps closer, his voice lowering to a murmur. The church of the time, he says, watched these paintings without suspicion, never suspecting that in their very altarpieces burned the old fire, the fire of Hermes, Trismegistus, of the Chaldean Magi, of those who once measured the heavens to speak with gods. The true adepts of the Renaissance knew that symbols could cross the boundaries of time, carrying meaning through centuries like sealed vessels adrift on the ocean of history. As his words sink in, the chamber seems to shift, the gold halos begin to shimmer with otherworldly patterns. The stone columns in the painted background twist into shapes resembling ancient obelisks, and the serene faces of angels seem to hold secret smiles. As if aware you have stepped through the veil, the scholar turns toward a narrow corridor, lit only by the faint glimmer of another chamber beyond. If you wish to see more, he says, you must understand that each symbol is a door. And some doors, once opened, cannot be closed. He begins to walk ahead, and you follow the first steps into a labyrinth of painted secrets where saints are philosophers, angels are messengers of the stars, and every brushstroke may conceal a fragment of the world before memory. The corridor narrows, and the echo of your footsteps is swallowed by the stillness, as if the very air here resists disturbance. At its end lies a small rotunda, the ceiling painted with a sky whose stars are arranged in patterns no ordinary astronomer of the Renaissance would have charted. The scholar raises his hand to the dome and traces an arc between constellations, not the zodiac familiar to most, but a map from older skies, from a time when the poles of the earth aligned differently and the heavens told a different story. This, he whispers, is the vault of the Hermetic cosmos. The artists knew the geometry of the heavens was the geometry of the soul. He points to the delicate intersections of circles and lines hidden in the fresco's composition. Vesicopiscis, flower of life, golden spirals unfurling from the gaze of painted figures. These forms are not decorative flourishes. They are the very diagrams of creation. The scaffolding upon which matter takes shape. In one panel, a scene of the Annunciation is rendered with uncanny precision. The angel's wing aligns perfectly with a ray of light that strikes a chalice on the table. The angle matches the declination of the sun at the spring equinox, a subtle nod to the rebirth of light after the long shadow of winter. Here, the divine message is not only theological but astronomical, binding the cycles of heaven to the mysteries of incarnation. The scholar walks to a tapestry, its surface woven with what seems like harmless floral motifs. But when you follow his hand, you see the blossoms are arranged in repeating ratios, 1 to 1.618, the golden proportion revered by Pythagoras, carried forward by the architects of sacred temples. Hidden in the pattern, faint and deliberate, is the sigil of Mercury, the patron of alchemists and messengers between worlds. This is how the masters worked, the scholar says. Every petal, every shadow, every fold of a robe obeys a cosmic order. The church saw only beauty, the initiate saw the code. He tells you of the Renaissance workshops, where apprentices learned not only to grind pigments and stretch canvas, but to inscribe invisible geometries beneath their paintings, geometric skeletons upon which the visible image was laid like skin over bone. The public admired the face, the initiate read the skeleton. As he speaks, the walls around you seem to breathe, as if the geometry itself carries a pulse, a living rhythm that echoes the heartbeat of the universe. You begin to feel that these shapes and proportions are not merely symbolic but operative, that they do something to the mind that perceives them, tuning it to a hidden frequency. The scholar's eyes glint in the dim light. This, he says, is the first of the hermetic laws in the Renaissance paintings. That which is above is as that which is below. The vault of the heavens is mirrored in the architecture of the soul, and art is the bridge between them. He lets the silence stretch, as if allowing the words to take root within you. From a side passage, a door creaks open, revealing a gallery bathed in a strange amber glow. There, you catch sight of canvases where the holy and the profane seem to meet, a place where saints walk among pagan gods, and angels bear the attributes of alchemical kings. The scholar steps into the light and gestures for you to follow. Come, he says, it is time you learn how the painters spoke into tongues, one for the many and one for the few. The gallery opens before you like the nave of a cathedral built of shadows and gold. The amber-light pulls in soft halos over each canvas, drawing the eye not only to the painted scenes, but to the spaces between them, where the air itself seems heavy with unspoken meaning. The scholar pauses before a towering altarpiece depicting the Madonna enthroned. At her feet, cherubs cluster with adoring gazes, but their postures are curious. One holds a branch of laurel, another a pomegranate split open, a third a spiral seashell whose pattern echoes the form of the galaxy itself. To the common worshipper, the scholar says, these are symbols of purity, abundance, and divine creation. But to the initiated, they speak in the language of antiquity. Laurel for Apollo, the solar god of truth. Pomegranate for Persephone, queen of the underworld. The spiral shell for the eternal unfolding of the cosmos. He leans closer, his voice almost conspiratorial. Renaissance art spoke into tongues, one of faith, visible to all, one of gnosis, heard only by those who could read the code. In the Madonna's serene expression, you see traces of an Egyptian Isis, nursing the infant Horus, the eternal mother and child, traveling through civilizations under ever-changing names. The saints surrounding her hold objects that are both Christian relics and alchemical emblems, a cross and a caduceus, a book of Gospels, and the emerald tablet's cryptic maxim etched in miniature Latin script. As above, so below, the scholar leads you to a smaller panel, one most visitors might overlook. It shows the crucifixion, but in the clouds above, instead of nameless cherubs, there are faint outlines of planetary gods: Jupiter with his scepter, Venus with her mirror, Saturn's somber gaze. The orbits of these planets, if traced on the composition, align perfectly with the limbs of the crucified figure, suggesting that the sacrifice is not only the drama of Christ, but the cosmic mystery of the dying and rising God, enacted in heaven as on earth. This is why the Inquisition was blind to the deeper current. The scholar continues. They saw piety. They did not see the resurrection of Mithras, Osiris, and Dionysus in the same image. The painter's gift was to cloak forbidden memory in the garments of the acceptable. He smiles faintly. Every master was a translator, bringing the tongue of the ancients into the language of their time. As you walk further, you notice something unsettling. The painted eyes of saints seem to follow you, their gazes patient yet unyielding, as though weighing whether you are worthy to carry what you now begin to perceive. The sense of walking in a church shifts into the sensation of walking in a temple that has no name, a temple that is everywhere and nowhere, built not of stone but of images, ratios, and hidden correspondences. At the far end of the gallery, a doorway is framed by two marble columns carved with spirals and winged spheres, unmistakably hermetic motifs. The scholar pauses before them. Beyond this threshold lies the deeper work, the paintings that conceal the rites of transformation themselves. To step through is to step into the alchemist's chamber. He looks at you with a knowing glance. If you go on, you will not only see the symbols, you will begin to feel them working in you. The moment you cross the threshold, the air changes, denser, warmer, tinged with the faint scent of myrrh and something metallic, like the memory of gold. The walls are lined with paintings whose colors seem deeper, more alive, as though they were mixed not only from earth and pigment, but from the very elements themselves. Here, the sacred narratives are still present, yet there is a new undercurrent, the unmistakable pulse of alchemy. The scholar stops before a canvas where a saint stands beside a fountain. At first, it appears a scene of baptism, but the water is not ordinary. It is painted with iridescent layers, flowing from the mouths of twin lions, one golden, one silver. This, the scholar says, is the alchemist's work disguised as holy sacrament. The golden lion, the sun, masculine principle; the silver lion, the moon, the feminine. Their union pours into the fountain, the vessel of the great work. In another painting, the crucifixion is flanked by two figures whose robes are painted in precise gradations: black at the hem, white at the chest, red at the collar, nigredo, albedo, rubedo. He murmurs, the three stages of transmutation. To the faithful, it is the drama of martyrdom. To the initiate, it is the death of the old self, the purification of the soul, and the birth of the perfected spirit. The scholar guides you to a smaller panel, almost hidden in shadow. Here, the Madonna is enthroned, but the infant in her lap holds not a globe or a cross. Instead, a crystalline sphere through which light bends into a rainbow. On them, flowers bloom in a sequence that mirrors the stages of alchemical distillation, each plant chosen for its ancient medicinal and transformative properties. This, he says softly, is not merely the mother and child, it is the philosopher's stone, veiled in flesh and innocence. The deeper you look, the more the paintings change before your eyes. You begin to see the coded vessels, the secret furnaces, the subtle gestures where a hand points not toward heaven but toward the solvet coagula, the dissolution and recombination that underlies all transformation. You feel the images not as static works, but as diagrams of a living process, an inner fire that once ignited the hearts of adepts. The scholar's voice lowers to a near whisper. The Renaissance master knew that true transformation was not of lead into gold, but of man into something more than man. They painted the process so that it could survive the silence imposed by those who feared it. His eyes hold yours, and once the image enters the soul, the work has already begun. Somewhere deeper in the chamber, a faint glimmer catches your attention. A painting set apart, lit by a single shaft of light from a narrow opening above. It seems older, darker, more dangerous. The scholar glances at it but does not move toward it. That, he says, is where the great work merges with the old pagan rites. The place where gods and saints share the same altar. He turns to you. If you step closer, you will see how the Renaissance dared to fuse the sacred and the profane into one vision, and why some said these paintings were living talismans. You approach the isolated canvas, its surface darkened by centuries, the gold leaf dimmed to a muted bronze, yet as you draw nearer, the image stirs with a strange vitality, as if it has been waiting for the gaze of one who can see. At first glance, it appears to be a conventional Christian tableau, the Adoration of the Magi. Three richly robed figures bow before the infant Christ, their gifts laid upon the ground. But the longer you look, the more the familiar dissolves into something older, stranger. One Negus wears a crown adorned with the horns of Ammon, the ram-headed god of ancient Thebes. Another holds not gold, frankincense, or myrrh, but a small bronze statuette of Hermes, the messenger, and Psychopomp. The third's robe is embroidered with constellations, his face turned toward the rising of Sirius, the star that heralded the Nile's flood and the renewal of Egypt's life. The scholar steps beside you, speaking low, as though the walls themselves might listen. Here the painters bound the old gods into the garments of the new. To the priests, these were wise kings from the east, but to the initiate, they are Osiris, Hermes, and the star priest of Isis, come to pay homage to the eternal child, not as a figure of one faith, but as the archetype that has worn 1,000 names. Your eyes move to the background. The architecture behind the figures is not Bethlehem's humble stone, but the colonnades of a Roman forum, crumbling into ruin. Ivy winds up broken columns. A solitary obelisk rises against the sky. In its shadow stands a small pagan altar, its flame still burning. This is no mere backdrop. It is a statement. The old temple yields to the new, yet the fire of the old gods continues, hidden in the folds of the new order. And then you notice something more unsettling. In the corners of the canvas, half shrouded in shadow, other figures watch. A hooded man with a serpent-shaped staff, a woman crowned with lunar crescents, a youth whose face mirrors that of the infant Christ, as if to say, "We are the same, these are the watchers, the keepers of the old mysteries, witnesses to their own rebirth in new form." The scholar's tone grows almost reverent. This fusion was the true heresy of the Renaissance. The Church believed it was commissioning art to glorify one truth. The artists knew they were building a temple where truths from every age could meet, each wearing the mask of another. He steps back, letting you take in the whole scene. It is neither purely Christian nor purely pagan. It is the eternal mystery, clothed in the language of its time. The chamber feels different now, heavier, as if the presences in the painting are aware of you. You have the sense that if you were to stand here long enough, the figures might step down from their places, the gods and saints walking together. In silent accord, the scholar gestures toward a narrow stair descending into darkness. The next hall is not for the eye, but for the spirit. There, the symbols cease to be images alone. They become living gateways. You will see the geometry and the gods, but you will feel their pull. The stair spirals downward into cool darkness, each step a muffled drumbeat in the hollow stone. The air thickens, carrying the scent of beeswax and incense, and something subtler, an undertone, like the metallic tang of struck bronze. At the base, a single archway opens into a chamber far larger than you expected, its curved walls vanishing into shadow. Only a few oil lamps burn, their flames trembling as if uneasy. Between them, great canvases and frescoed panels rise from floor to ceiling. their subjects bathed in fractured light. Yet these works do not seem inert, they feel like doors waiting to be opened. The scholar raises his hand as though to caution you and speaks in a tone that is not explanation but invocation. These are not merely depictions, they are talismans, arrangements of form, proportion, and color crafted according to the same principles by which the ancients built their temples and their star calendars. Stand too close, and the boundary between the viewer and the vision grows thin. You approach the nearest painting, a depiction of the Transfiguration. Christ hovers above the mountaintop, flanked by Moses and Elijah, bathed in a radiance so meticulously rendered it seems to pulse. But within the folds of light, you see something else, a spiral of interlocking triangles, the signature geometry of the Merkaba mystics. As you stare, the spiral seems to draw you in, the painted surface deepening like the surface of a pool. For a moment, you feel as though you are looking not at the scene, but through it. The scholar steps beside you. The Hermetic artists knew the law of correspondence was not just metaphor. It was operative. The right proportions, the right alignments, could open the mind to the same realm the image portrays. These are maps to other states of being, and in rare moments, to other places. Another canvas catches your eye, a scene of the Annunciation. The angel's wings spread in a curve that perfectly traces the arc of a lunar eclipse. Behind Mary, a window reveals a sky in which Venus and Jupiter meet in conjunction, an event painted exactly as it would have appeared in the heavens decades before the work was created. The artists calculated such alignments with precision. The scholar murmurs, for the moment the planets meet in the heavens, they meet also in the soul of the viewer. You move from painting to painting, and each feels like a different key, some cool and crystalline, others heavy and intoxicating. In one, an alchemist in monk's robes tends a furnace whose smoke coils into the shape of the caduceus. In another, an archangel steps forward, one foot planted in a meadow of spring flowers, the other in a landscape of snow and ice, as if straddling two seasons, or two worlds. The sensation builds, a pressure in the mind, a subtle hum in the bones, as though the proportions and symbols are adjusting something inside you. The scholar watches quietly, then says, "This is why some called these works dangerous paintings. They are not content to be seen, they seek to change the one who sees them." At the far end of the hall, a massive panel glows in the dimness. You can see only fragments from here, a labyrinth, the star map, a figure stepping through a ring of fire. The scholar's eyes follow your gaze. That, he says, is the portal image, the most carefully guarded of them all. To understand is to understand the Renaissance as the last great initiation of the West. He pauses. If you wish, we can go to it. But once we do, the work will no longer be about history. It will be about you. You approach the vast panel at the end of the hall, its surface catching the lamplight like the skin of a living thing. Even before you stand before it, the composition seems to pull at you. A subtle current, like the tug of a hidden tide. At its center is a robed figure, neither man nor woman, crowned with a circlet of interwoven serpents. One hand points to the heavens, where a sphere of stars is arranged in the form of the flower of life. The other hand points to the earth, where a labyrinth spirals inward toward a flame. The gesture is unmistakable, as above, so below, yet it is rendered not as a passive symbol, but as an active bridge, as if the figure's very stance holds the two worlds in balance. On this central presence, 12 smaller seams spiral outward like the hours on a clock, each depicting a moment of transformation. A pilgrim casting off a heavy cloak, a chalice overflowing with light, a phoenix rising from a pyre, a child stepping from the shadow of a withered tree into a garden of blossoms. Each image is linked to the next by threads of gold so fine they seem almost imagined, yet when you follow them with your eyes, you realize they form the pattern of the zodiac. The scholar's voice is hushed, almost reverent. This is the portal image. It is not a single seam. but an entire journey compressed into one vision. The central figure is the adept, the one who has walked the spiral, descending into shadow, returning with fire. The 12 outer scenes are the stations of the great work, the same in every true tradition, whether robed in Christian, pagan, or Hermetic form. You step closer, and the labyrinth in the lower half of the panel begins to draw your attention. Its path mirrors the coiling of a serpent, its turns marked by small symbols, the sigil of Saturn at the first bend, Mercury at the second, the Sun at the heart. As you gaze, the spaces between the painted lines seem to deepen, the labyrinth becoming less an image than a doorway in the mind. The scholar leans close. In the Hermetic understanding, the portal is not crossed by the feet, but by the inner senses. To see the pattern is to step into it. The painters understood how image and symbol could prepare the soul for that crossing, and how the crossing, once made, would leave its mark forever. You notice now that the stars above the central figure are not random points, but precise positions of the heavens on a date centuries before the painting was made, a date which, the scholar tells you, was calculated according to ancient sidereal time, when the equinox aligned with a forgotten temple in the east. For the masters, he says, this was not nostalgia. It was a reminder. The heavens turn, the ages shift, but the path is always the same. The longer you stand before the panel, the more the distance between you and it seems to dissolve. The gold threads glimmer faintly, and you feel the pull. To follow them, to walk the spiral, to step into the fire at its center and see what lies beyond. The scholar rests a hand on your shoulder. The last step of our journey lies beyond this hall. It is not about paintings, or history, or even symbols. It is about what the Renaissance sought to awaken, the remembrance of who and what you truly are. The chamber beyond is smaller, its walls unadorned, as if to strip away all distraction. In the center stands a single easel, draped in black velvet. The scholar walks to it in silence and, with a slow, deliberate motion, pulls the cloth away. The canvas is unlike the others. It contains no saints, no angels, no mythic beasts. Instead, you see a single human figure, robed in simple white, standing on a shore where the sea meets the stars. Above, the constellations curve into a perfect sphere. Below, the waves carry reflections of those same stars, as if the sky has descended to rest upon the waters. You look closer, and the figure's face begins to shift, not in the way of painted illusions, but in the way a mirror reveals what is before it. The features are yours, not as you are now, but as something greater, brighter, ageless. Around the figure's head, a faint corona pulses in the same golden ratio spirals you saw woven through the earlier works. The scholar's voice is barely audible. This was the hidden purpose of the Renaissance masters, not to preserve the past, but to awaken the eternally in those who could see. Every pagan god, every Christian mystery, every alchemical furnace was but a reflection of this one truth, that the divine is not elsewhere. It is here, clothed in your own form. The stillness in the room deepens, and you sense that the centuries fall away. You are standing where Botticelli once mixed lapis with gold leaf, where Leonardo measured the ratios of the human body against the vault of the heavens, where unknown apprentices traced hidden symbols into the underlayers of sacred scenes. And now, as their works once spoke to those prepared, this final image speaks to you. The scholar steps back into shadow. The journey through the paintings was never about learning their secrets alone. It was an initiation. Each symbol you recognized, each geometry you traced, each god you saw hiding in plain sight, they were keys, turning one by one in the lock of your own perception. The figure on the shore lifts its hand, mirroring the gesture of the portal image. One finger to the heavens, one to the earth. You understand now. The art was not only a record of the Hermetic law, it was a living bridge designed to place you upon it. The lamps flicker, and for a moment, the boundaries of the room dissolve. You feel the pull of the labyrinth, the glow of the phoenix's fire, the rhythm of the heavens turning above you. The Renaissance, the true Renaissance, was never only a chapter in history. It was a reminder planted like a seed to bloom when the time was right. The scholar's final words drift through the dimness. You have walked the spiral, the veil is thinner now, what you do with the seeing is yours alone. The light in the canvas fades, the image stills, and the chamber returns to silence. But in that silence, you carry the echo of a truth, older than empires, a truth painted in gold, guarded in shadow, and now alive in you. Ask Chet.